welcome to the Built to Win show. I'm Gina Parris, and whether your game is financial, athletic, or personal, we want you built up to win it. And I cannot wait for you to learn how to win today when it comes to winning people over to your point of view. So our guest today is Bob Burg, and Bob says that we can make people do what we want them to do. Right, Bob?
Well, I might not say it exactly like that, but hey, I'll take it. That's okay.
Actually, Bob's going to teach us how to do that while making them feel genuinely good about themselves. So Bob is a very sought-after speaker. He speaks to corporate audiences, entrepreneurial audiences. I have been really blessed to share the stage with you, of course, and we had such a blast. And sometimes your audiences are 16,000 people, sometimes 60.
Absolutely.
Love it. And for years, Bob was known for his books, Endless Referrals, and one of my all-time favorites, The Go-Giver. We also have It's Not About You. You've written 4 books that have sold over 250,000 copies each, right?
Yeah, with the It's Not About You, it's interesting. I asked the publisher if we could say it's not about you unless you're Gina Parris and it is about you. They would go for it. I don't know why.
Gina who?
No, they didn't say that. No, they said we love Gina. We just can't name the book that.
Thank you. That's funny. And so you're a million book seller, just such a superstar. I know constantly on the bestsellers list and all kinds of niches. And I want to say personally, this book has had such an impact on my life. And for 20-something years, I've read about a book a week. Sometimes it's rereading old books. And this book is right up there with, as you know, my 1983 copy that my dad gave me of The Greatest Salesman, or The Greatest Secret in the World, Greatest Salesman. Same book. And this comes complete with a note from my dad, which makes me want to hear you talk about your dad today. And the fascinating thing is that now Bob's come out with this book, Adversaries into Allies. And when Bob told me that this was the book that he was put on the planet to write, and this is the message you are here to deliver, I just couldn't wait to read it, and you absolutely do not disappoint in this book. So we're going to find out what's really an adversary, how to turn them into an ally, and how to make sure we all feel good doing it instead of killing each other. So welcome, Bob Burg.
Thank you, Gina. Love speaking with you. I would write a book just for the opportunity to be interviewed by you. It's such a pleasure.
Fun. Thank you so much. Gosh, I just couldn't wait to get you on here and talk about this. So we mentioned your dad. I think he had something to do with you writing this book. Will you tell me about that?
Well, really, in observing my dad all my life, I've gotten to see the guy who was the best at people skills I've ever seen and that I've ever experienced. Just a knack, and to this day, and as we record this, he'll be 90 in a few days,
right.
And just a guy who, it didn't matter where he went, who he spoke with, what situation he was in, people just loved him. And I think a lot of it with my dad was very intuitive, very natural. He came from a very poor background. It was, immigrant slum Americana during the Depression, that sort of thing. So here's a guy without a lot of formal education, but just really cared about people. Always did. And he was always that guy. It didn't matter who that other person was. He was just as interested in knowing about that person and really genuinely making people feel good about themselves and bringing out their best. And so I got to watch that. Now, I didn't always live my life that way. Sometimes, the sun sort of goes in a different direction, but then hopefully comes back, right? And kind of then takes the best example and runs with that. And certainly I've studied throughout the years all the masters, or many of the masters, whether it was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, perhaps the best book of all time I've ever read. And,
that was the first personal development book that my dad gave me, How to Win Friends, when I was in middle school. Keep going.
Yeah. And, and many of the masters, and people today who do a great job in teaching these kind of, I learned from all of them. Really, though, the example of my dad is the best. And I constantly, even today, when I'm in a situation where I'm just not exactly sure what to do, it's I'm picturing how my dad would handle this situation, and that's always the way to go. So you and I were both blessed with great parents, and hey, you don't get any better breaks than that, right?
That's a huge blessing. So I know you, and you are such a master at people skills, and you do have a gift for making people feel great about themselves. So it's surprising to me that wasn't always the case with that heritage that you have. What made you? What were some challenges for you in feeling good?
Well, I don't often talk about this, Gina, but I have always had, and still have, but I had OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. Not as people talk about it, oh, I'm OCD. Nah, that's a whole different thing. I mean, I had it bad, and I had it growing up, but I'm old enough. I'll be 56 next month, and I'm old enough that back then there wasn't a name for it. Nobody knew what it was. And so I really struggled. I was angry at the world and angry at myself. It really messes with your head, OCD. Again, I still have it to this day, but it's manageable. And I've been able to work with things despite it, not because of it. But that aside, that kept me very angry for a long time. And so I sort of resisted. I always, I think, was a nice person, but I was hot on the trigger. And that's kind of how I was, and I had some real anger issues that I had to overcome before I could really fulfill any kind of effectiveness that I had to fulfill. So, without getting into it too much, that was kind of my background as to kind of what kept me from that.
So you had to move from that volatile kind of place to mastering these keys. You have 5 keys that you say will make us an ultimate influencer. And when you talk about influencing an adversary, let's talk about what might be an adversary.
Yeah, in this case, and in the context of the book, when I say adversary, I don't necessarily mean someone who is an out-and-out enemy. It could be someone who, just because of the situation or the context, they are in some way, somehow standing in the way of your personal satisfaction. It could be that you want to bring something back to the store and to return it, you don't have your receipt, and the person at the customer service desk hasn't been equipped to know how to work with a customer where that's the case. And so you need to be able to utilize these people skills, and whether it ends up that your satisfaction is attained by having them return your money or what have you, or talking to the manager and being able to do so in a way that you inspire their commitment to solving the challenge rather than their being defensive and being, or it could be you want to ask your boss for a raise, and and you ask him or her in such a way that you communicate that you'd like the raise because you need the money. They may feel sorry for you, but they're probably not going to give you a raise. So you need to know how to do it in such a way that they see the value in doing so. They're not your enemy, but it's an adversarial type of situation. There are many of those. Now, I used to love, and I know you're a baseball mom and you coach a lot of baseball players and other athletes. And I used to love what Sadaharu Oh, the legendary Japanese home run hitter, used to say, that he looked at the opposing pitchers not as adversaries, but as his partners in home runs. And that's a great reframe. And I see our adversaries as our partners in attaining personal satisfaction. I also see our adversaries as our partners in growth. In order to be able to win people over and persuade in an effective and very benevolent way, you need to grow inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing along the lines of those athletes, why I want every coach to read your book is because I have players come to me every season that say something to the effect of, I hate my coach, should I quit the program? Or we see coaches get more and more agitated if their players aren't performing because suddenly it's about them and their job. And so the idea of learning how to persuade and get these results while making your athletes, your teammates in any arena feel great is awesome. So step number 1, how about we say those 5 keys, and then we'll cover. We might have time for 3 to go a little more in depth.
Sure. Well, the 5 keys themselves. Number 1 is control your own emotions. Number
Yes.
2 is understand the clash of belief systems. Number 3 is acknowledge their ego. Number 4 is to set the proper frame. And number 5 is to communicate with tact and empathy.
Absolutely. So I love them. I find myself, honestly, I refer to this book again and again. And from the beginning, I was in a situation, helping somebody with an adversary, and I kind of found myself taking their offense almost, try not to, but I read this and thought, I should have read this last week. So you'll have a lot of moments like that with this book. How do you control your anger or your own emotion if you're leading the way you've been led? Our coaches, again, that's what they know. I was screamed at. What's all we know? It toughens them up. Why bother? Why bother controlling that emotion?
Well, first, I think we have to understand that as human beings, we are emotional creatures.
Right.
We'd like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty much run on emotion. And that's not a bad thing that we're emotional. It's not good to be run on it, but it's not bad that we're emotional. Emotions are a great part of life. I mean, I love what our mutual friend Dondi Scumaci says. She says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. Okay, and I think that's what it's all about. When we are in control of our emotions, Gina, when we're in control of ourselves, as my dad has always called it, being the boss of yourself, then and only then are we in a position where we can take a negative person or situation and turn that around so that everyone benefits. Zig Ziglar used to call it the difference between reacting and responding. When we react, we're being controlled by other outside circumstances or people. When we respond, we're in control of our emotions and of ourselves. I used to love his analogy. Did you respond well to the medication, or did you have a bad reaction? And that's what it is. So you think about the coach, or you think about the salesperson, or you think about the corporate leader. Something happens, whether someone says something that pushes your buttons, whether someone does something that's out of line, whether a circumstance happens. It's not that you can't discipline or yell or do it. No, it has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's, are you in control of your emotions while you're doing it? Is it happening? Are you doing what you're doing because you've thought it out, because you've logically come to a conclusion and a decision, or are you being run by and in control? And to be mighty, and the sages said, who is the mighty person? That person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy a friend. So the first thing we need to do is understand why it's important. It's important because without being in control of our emotions, we're not nearly as effective as we could possibly be.
We're amusing. We're amusing or infuriating.
Exactly. And then it's, okay, so how do we do it? Well, the best way is to take the advice, take the example of the astronaut, who before they go up, one of the most dangerous things you can do to go up in space, before every mission, what do? They rehearse. They run through simulations before they go up there, so that when it's game time, they've already done it. When something comes up in space, they've already been there. They've done that, and we know the unconscious doesn't know the difference between what's actually happened and what's been suggested to it over and over and over and over again.
Right.
And really, that's what it is. You wouldn't think every year in spring training, what do they do? They hit a ground ball to the first baseman, the pitcher runs over, and they practice how many hundreds of times taking that throw from the first baseman. So they don't wait until the game, they don't wait until the season starts to all of a sudden So rehearse it as much as you can in your mind, in your mind's eye. Picture that situation where someone's pushed your button, said something, done something, and you didn't handle it the right way. Now go back and picture having responded to it, thinking about it, living in your consciousness, and handling it the right way. Now, picture future situations that can happen. You know the situations that are going to happen, and when they do, now picture yourself handling it beautifully, thinking about it, responding rather than reacting, and handling it perfectly. Rehearse it, do it, build on your small successes, and those times when you mess up, you can feel a little badly about it, but not too badly, because you're only human, and you're going to have plenty of chances to practice.
Oh, beautiful. And step number 2 is so empowering, because sometimes in a flash, when you practice step 2, it'll help you change your emotional state just by changing the way you look at the situation. So describe.
Exactly. Well, the principle number 2 is to understand the clash of belief systems. What is a belief? A belief is simply a subjective truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth as we understand the truth to be. Which doesn't mean it's the truth. It means it's our truth. Our belief system, I believe our belief system is really our operating system.
Yes.
And it's unconscious. We don't even know we're being run by this operating system. Our belief system is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular entertainment, popular culture, cultural mores, everything we touch, taste, hear, see, smell, everything.
Yeah. It's
formed very, very young. And we don't, as we take in this information, we're not looking at it critically. Why do they say that's true? Why is this true? Right. I should check my premises and think who first. No, we just accept it as fact. Well, even as we grow up and get older, we do the same thing. So most people are running around not even aware that they're run, that their decisions are made, their thoughts are thought, their words are said based on a belief system they're not even aware they have. Let's add on top of that this other person with whom you're about to have a difficult conversation or interaction or what have you, they're run by an operating system or belief system they don't even know they have. Now let's add one more thing to it. As human beings, we tend to believe that everybody else sees the world as we see the world, which is why you hear people say things like, oh, everybody feels that way. Nobody likes that. Or, I would never say that to someone.
Yeah.
No, because that's your belief system, but someone else would. So what we need to do is not necessarily understand that person's belief system. They probably don't understand their belief system.
Sure.
What we need to do is simply understand that this person most likely sees the world from a whole different set of beliefs.
Yeah, talk about the elephant analogy.
Well, this is a very old and I believe very wise analogy. It's called The Six Blind Men of Indostan, and it was about six blind men who all were at different parts of an elephant and were feeling the different parts and giving their definition of what an elephant is. Well, the person who felt the trunk said, well, obviously an elephant is a really big hose. The person who felt the leg, well, obviously an elephant is a really big tree trunk. The person who felt the torso of the elephant, well, what are you talking about? Obviously an elephant is a huge wall. The person who was at the tail, what are you talking about? An elephant could be nothing other than a rope. And it went like that. Well, they were all right. It's their subjective truth. It's their perceptual reality, as Roy Williams called it. And so what we need to understand is that different people all have their different perception of reality. Right. Again, we don't have to agree with it. Right. We don't change no. What we do need to do, though, is to understand that if we know they're coming from a different belief system, now we've created a context where we can work within this effectively and provide for a win for everyone involved.
Right, and not take things personally. We can give them the benefit of the doubt. And also, don't you think it helps to just remind ourselves we're all, like I say it this way, we're all a product of our teaching. That's what's created our belief system. So we'll, get so annoyed with somebody who's not as enlightened as we are, which is very arrogant because, we're all just, without our teaching, we aren't where we are. Everyone is a product of everything you just named. So it does help.
And you make a great point. The fact that it's unconscious is the big thing, because we don't even know that we're run by these. Exactly. We think we're thinking logically. Yeah. And the other person doesn't know that they're run by those. They think they're thinking logically. So the first thing we have to do is even be aware of these belief systems and how powerful they are. Sometimes our beliefs, our unconscious beliefs, sometimes they serve us in terms of keeping us alive, keeping us healthy. Most times they don't, though, because they all date back to the cave person days. The person the same signals meant the same thing. Is this sound they heard, did that represent a potential dinner or a potential diner? And they had to know these things. Well, we no longer have that life and death type thing where we need these unconscious beliefs to keep us safe. So a lot of them actually hurt us rather than help us. So I certainly am not saying we should, just ditch all our belief. No, but we need to start questioning our premises and saying, why do I believe this? Why is it truth? Why is it fact?
Right.
When we do it that way, we start seeing some things in ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So it helps. Yeah, exactly. And it helps us keep our emotions in check. It helps us come at a place where we can help move our adversaries powerfully. And the whole key to you is to make them feel genuinely good about themselves. Because people do things, as you say, or as Dale Carnegie taught us, ultimately people do things for their own reasons.
Yeah.
So principle number 3 ties right into that.
Yeah, and that's acknowledge their ego. And why do I say their ego? Well, because we don't have one.
Of course.
So, the ego itself isn't a bad thing. The ego is just the I. It's that sense of ourself that realizes we are a unique individual, separate from all other individuals. And I realize that's become politically incorrect to say, what, we're individuals? Yes, we are. That doesn't mean we're not part of a bigger thing. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that we live our lives, we pursue our happiness according to our own sense of happiness and values. And so long as we don't infringe upon the rights of anyone else to do the same, we're fine with that. But the ego itself is that sense of I.
Yeah. It's
powerful. And when we harness it, just much like emotions, when we're in control of our ego, we can do great things. That's, Carl Yastrzemski, who was known for taking batting practice. He had blisters because he wanted to be the best at what he did. After the first game against the Cardinals in the '67 World Series, he actually went out and he had a lousy day at bat. He actually went out into the area, went all the way to center field by himself, pulled the batting cage back. Things were different a little bit back then, 50 years ago or so, and took batting practice for another couple of hours. And next time he hit a home run. So, it's those little things. The ego, when we harness it, great. It's when it controls us that things happen. Now, I think we can acknowledge that. That's fine. When I say acknowledge the other person's ego, I don't mean saying, hey, buddy, your ego. No, that would have the opposite effect.
That's my gift. When someone's ugly, I just want to knock down their ego with my quick tongue.
In our own mind that if that person's acting in a way that's not productive, that's counterproductive, that's nasty, that's not even good for their own benefit, we might know that it's their ego that's out of control, and we have to honor that because it will come into play. We can ignore it, but we're probably not going to get the results.
Right. So, oh man, that was one of those I thought, gosh, okay, Gina, it's not your gift to destroy their ego just when they're extra egotistical. I can be mean.
But again, let's go back to something. Let's say you're a team leader, a sales manager, a coach, and you have someone whose ego is, getting that doesn't mean you can't tell them that. It means that you do it out of a sense of strength, of being in control, not out of anger.
Exactly.
There's times you have to call someone on the carpet. Hopefully you can do it tactfully and with kindness, but you've got to but as long as you are in control of yourself while you're doing it, you're making a decision based on strength, not weakness.
Well, and thank God for the mentors. Whoops, I'm having some echo. Thank goodness for the echoes, or the mentors who helped me over the years as well when they did call me on the carpet out of a place of love. So that is awesome. Well, we're almost out of time here, so I just want to tell our listeners that there's so much more you get to learn from Bob about these tools and of course the other principles to help you become a master influencer. And at his website, Burg.com, he's generously giving you a free chapter, but you want to go there and really you just want to flat out order it as fast as you can. And this is not a book that you'll have and read once. You'll keep it close by. I'm confident of that. You'll have it on your desk. You'll have it on your nightstand. Oh, I told you I read it to my twins. They read some in the car, and I call it How to Be Popular Training.
Thank you.
So they're really great. They're very short chapters, so you can read, just a chapter a day. And I love it. So I really want you to go to Burg.com and get your chapter. Just order the book. Order everything he has. Just is what you'll want to do.
Oh, thank you.
And what else do you want to say in closing about being an influencer and making people feel great as we bring them to, influencing them to what we want to do?
I think you brought up a great point earlier when you said that, as Dale Carnegie said in his classic, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So we've always got to keep them in mind. We've always got to ask, how does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does that align with their goals, with their wants, needs, desires, with their values? And to the degree we do that, we are really earning that commitment rather than that compliance, which never, as Don DeScamacci says, compliance will never take you where commitment can go. So when we focus on bringing value to others, we're going to be more influential.
Oh, gosh, you just always have so much wisdom. We're gonna have to bring you back, and we'll talk
I would love it.
We'll cover the last two steps some more. And it's such a privilege. Go to Burg.com, and if you like what you saw here on this video, then I hope you'll hit the thumbs up and hit subscribe and leave a comment, because we want to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Gina Parris, and I'm in your corner. Thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you.